Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and I'm thrilled about my guest and all she has to offer. If you have not yet joined us in the Secret Sauce group, this is a private group where we continue the conversation. So go to Facebook and type in the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating and join us there for support. Do not try to overcome emotional eating on your own. Not going to happen. This is the hardest of all addictions to overcome. So definitely join us in the Secret Sauce group. And if you're wondering if you're an emotional eater, guess what? You can actually take a quiz and find out if you are. So go to healyourhunger.com and take the free quiz. It'll pop up and just take that. It'll take you about 3 minutes to take the quiz, but then you'll have your answer. Right out of the chute, you'll have your answer, and then you'll have action steps you can take on what to do about it. But you know, my experience is anybody who struggles with food and weight is somewhere on the spectrum of emotional eating. So you'll literally find out where you are on the spectrum when you take that quiz. So I want to talk to you about my amazing guest, who's also a friend and colleague, and she's just such a beautiful light and soul. And I just thought her message would be so great for all of us who are on, you know, our journey of overcoming emotional eating, you know, becoming more of who we're meant to be, becoming more aligned with ourselves, you know, clearing out the emotions that block us from being the beautiful souls that we are truly here to be. So Marcela McBride has been immersed in the personal growth industry for over 20 years, and she's really a spiritual guide and mentor to women. And she helps them awaken and live in their spiritual authenticity by walking the priestess path. And this is all kind of new to me. So you and I are going to learn about this together. So welcome, Marcela.
Thank you. So excited to be here with you. I'm so
excited
honored. Yeah. We got to chat today more about how much link there is in the work that we do. And I'm really excited to expand on it and share you with my people too. So important.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I'm just really excited to have you here. And it's been really wonderful supporting each other on our, you know, journeys of carrying our message to the world. So our messages to the world. So, but I really have not understood, you know, entirely your work. And that's why I just thought, you know what, instead of just talking to you privately, why don't we do a podcast, and why don't I ask you questions, and me and everybody else who's tuning in can learn about something that not everybody knows about or understands, and I think is very, very important. And as you said, very aligned with that incredible journey of overcoming emotional eating, which is not about going on a diet or an exercise program, but really dropping into who we are into our soul's purpose in this world and getting aligned with that. And so it's just wonderful to have you here and talk about the priestess path. Now, you know, I'm going to ask you some questions that might to you be like, duh, but
not at all.
Honestly, I'm just going to lay it out there. Like, I'm ignorant about this stuff. So talk to us first. What's a priestess? What's that all about? I think I probably am one, but I just want to know what that is. I'd like to think I am. People call me a princess for sure. So if it's anything related to being a princess, I'm a priestess, but maybe not.
A lot of differences there for sure.
Oh well.
For sure. We can be a princess on the priestess path, but we're not always a priestess on the princess path.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a really rich history as spiritual women leaders, and it's not something that is steeped in our consciousness and our current culture. So we understand priest.
Okay.
Priestess, female version of that.
Okay.
But not in the way that we've been trained in conventional religion.
Okay.
And so the path that I'm teaching is very earth-based, ancient, a deep inner knowing as women that we are the divine source of all creation. We are the God, goddess that birthed us into the world. And this path is about bringing forth the feminine face of God, the feminine aspects of divinity to the table. and trusting ourselves, and our intuition, our inner knowing, our hearts, our body temples, which is the work that you really dive into deeply, treating ourselves as a temple, as the divine that we are. And so this is a bit of a reprogramming, which I know you do as well so much. It's a reprogramming that we are so much more than we realize, and that we're creating our reality all the time. And so what if we're like visioning and birthing a new way of being in the world is about seeing a new world that works for all. And with that comes the inner conversation. And so as women leaders, as spiritual women leaders, as a priestess, we're embodied in a deep knowing that we're here for something important, that our lives matter, and that we have a message to bring out into the world. And so I work with women that show up, that know that some part of themselves knows that. And I imagine your ladies that come to you, they know there's like, this is not working. What I've been doing in my life is not working. I'm getting all the signs and signals, whether it's carrying extra weight or struggle in our relationships or financial challenges or a career that's not fulfilling. There's another way. And I feel like both of us are speaking to, there's another way that we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. And it's linked to this specific work around awakening that feminine face of God and being that in the world.
Well, I really love that, just what you've said so far, because, and you know, what it makes me think of is, I mean, of just how history has been so male-centric. You know, the face of spirituality has been male-centric, and, you know, thinking of God as a he or a man, you know, and which I do not believe. I believe I believe God has that feminine and that masculine aspect, and is not a human form at all, you know, and certainly, I mean, Jesus, of course, was a beautiful expression of God, but I, you know, I see that so many of these, you know, both the feminine and the masculine are a part of God's nature. So, and yet churches and, you know, history and, you know, the institution of religion has been so male centric. So I guess they've kind of, the training was really more of the masculine part of God, right? And there's so much that was not focused on. And thus, as women, those aspects in us maybe got overlooked as well.
Absolutely.
So, right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. And so if we're born into a world, as most of us have been, to, especially as women coming into a female form, or even those that identify as women, whatever form they came in as, I specifically work with women. I know you do as well. When we come in with this physical form, and as little girls, we're only shown a masculine version of God. Then a disconnect happens inside of ourselves of like, wait a minute, where am I? Where am I represented? Where is the face that is me? And so this path is about awakening an ancient knowledge and ancient knowing within us for modern times, as modern priestesses in the world that are living our deeper purpose, is to heal that split inside of ourselves.
Okay.
And so it's the split that happens when we come into the world, and it's also linked to original sin, which I don't believe in. I don't believe that a divine source of all creation that is magnificent in all of its glory would create something to them, damn it, when it gets here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right.
It doesn't. And so I feel like a big piece of this work is about healing that and welcoming a whole new way of seeing the divine that is for everyone, that is masculine and feminine both. And when we really look at that inner conversation, what is that core piece of us that when we came in to only see a masculine version, and then to feel that we're damaged somehow right when we get here. And it's almost like we have to, and I think this links to both of our works so deeply, we have to keep proving ourselves somehow that we're worthy of love.
Yeah.
And so how much of what the way we live our lives is wrapped up in this inner conversation that I'm not enough no matter what I do. Whether we're using food as a Band-Aid, or we're in unhealthy relationship patterns that we're just not getting to the core of, or work that's not fulfilling us, whatever way it expresses itself, getting into the root of that conversation. And I feel that's what we're doing, is like, we're really getting in deep. It's like, how much does your life shift when you start to recognize that I am that I am that love that I was created here to be. And with that, I can heal that split within myself and unify the divine and human, the masculine and feminine, the shadow and the light within us, which is all an inner conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, our gifts can come out into the world. We recognize, oh, I do have something important to say. I have a book to write and a business to create and collaborations. And I just get chills all over. We start to believe that we're here for something important.
Amen. Oh, I love that. So,
Mm-hmm.
so true. And I think, gosh, there's so many things I want to say. You know, first of all, I think that, yeah, when we do grow up feeling unworthy for, you know, whatever reason or for many reasons, we don't claim that spiritual part of us, you know, and I know, gosh, I know the women in my program they're so intuitive, you know, they're deep feelers. Emotional eaters are deep feelers, and they're very intuitive, and it scares them, and they don't know how to harness it. They don't know how to accept it as a part of them. I know even my mother, you know, my whole life she would have strong intuition, but she never owned it. So she'd always be, you know, anytime something would happen bad or whatever, she'd always go, I had a feeling. She'd play it over and over, and she'd be like, totally. I had a feeling, and I knew there was something wrong with that person, or I knew there was something off. So she had this strong intuition, but she was so unsure of herself, she didn't claim it. And of course, I kind of adopted that same sense of hesitancy and lack of confidence in myself, you know, and so much of what it sounds like you're talking about is just putting a stake in the ground for our divine, you know, priestesshood, right?
Yeah, it really is. And it links back to our history of not actually being safe, literally not being safe to recognize that we had spiritual gifts of intuition, psychic ability, inner knowing. Like, how is it that like so many women know how to just naturally heal with herbs and working with crystals and the cycles and seasons of the moon? And that was put in the witch box. Right. And everything that was uncomfortable for modern society, especially as the empowered woman, put in the witch box. Right. And we literally have a deep history of wounding around that we get to heal on this path that represents the way we hold ourselves back in the world now by the inner conversation and inner shadow that tries to hold us back from being effective in the world by not trusting ourselves, not trusting the voice. What type of world would we live in if women always trusted the inner voice?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
My gosh. How many relationships would we not move forward in? Right. How many jobs would we not say yes to because we know it's not right for us, regardless of how much is on the price tag?
Exactly. Yes. So true. And it is scary to own that voice, you know, because we're so wobbly, but that's the journey. Like, that's the journey of our lives, is to finally get comfortable being who we are and stop, you know, acting like who we are isn't enough, that we have to try to be Jane or, you know, Karen or Gloria. Like, it's like, what's wrong with what God gave us? Like, what's wrong with who we're born to be? You know, nothing. Let's live into that.
Yeah, and we came into the world as such unique blueprints. Like, we were so uniquely divine in the expression we came in with. There's no one like us. And if we really tap into the uniqueness that we are and the specific gifts we came to bring, that, you know, that the way I describe them is like some basic categories of gifts that we're bringing. Incredible amount of visionary women are walking the world not trusting themselves because the trust has been either verbally or physically pushed out of them in some way from a very young age. And we get it so early on, and it's linked to our sexual expression and our voices and our ability to say no when we know something doesn't feel right. And the more and more women awaken to trusting that inner voice and inner knowing, we would send a ripple out into the world of unstoppable change, that everyone wins and no more abuse and no more war, and there's more than enough for everyone, because that's the reality.
Yeah, and that's the feminine.
It is.
Yeah.
Can we talk the whole picture?
Yeah. So is that what you mean? Or I often hear the divine feminine. Is that those are feminine qualities?
Yeah. And the feminine, the masculine and feminine live within all of us. And so we all have masculine, feminine qualities. And so I like to separate masculine, feminine from male and female.
Okay.
Because that's part of the wounding too, is to say, well, men are all this way and women are all this way. And that's just not true. It's really damaging. And so men are also intuitive and nurturing and have an inner voice that they're not all expressing, and have a heart they've not all necessarily felt comfortable to share in the world. That's a whole other conversation. Yeah. So we're all learning how to do this in a new way. And specifically the divine feminine, not just the feminine face of God, as in the goddesses and archetypes throughout time that we've known, that have been either living here in the earth or ascended masters, archangels, that sort of thing. We have all that too. This is about welcoming in a new conversation where that's got to start to be more the forefront. That the masculine version of face of God has gotten a lot of playtime. It's gotten a lot of playtime. And it's time to balance that. And it's also connected to the way we treat the earth, the way we treat each other in society, the inequality we're seeing happening on the planet that's rising to be seen right now, the way we treat indigenous people and the elderly, children, I think is all linked back to this deeper conversation of the feminine rising within all things, to say, time for me to have some limelight, time for me to show you what's possible if you welcome me into your life, into your body, into your heart. It's like, I'm already there. There's just been a lot of layers of resistance and societal programming and training up against me, but I never went away. And I've been knocking on your door with that inner voice and inner knowing that you have. If you just trust me, I can show you a world of incredible living in integrity and purpose and passion and ecstasy beyond our wildest dreams. That's what's possible.
Amen. I love that. And that's what's required. And that is it's required to overcome emotional eating, because, and that's, my clients are coming into that place where they're standing for themselves, and they're like, no more BS, no more pretending to be somebody I'm not, no more pussyfooting around, and I'm sure your clients are doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's huge. You really start to stand for yourself and that voice inside of you. And once we open that up, like, so much is possible, and women just like magically, life starts to shift and change once we heal. I don't even say fix, but we heal that inner conversation within ourselves. It ripples out into everything.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you mentioned a little while ago, the darkness and the light. And, so many emotional eaters are stuffing that, they're trying to bury that darkness within them, and that their knowledge of the darkness, because they don't know what to do with it, and they're afraid of it. I was, one of the things that caused me to, really when I hit my bottom with food, and binge eating, one of the things that was really driving me nuts is I had a lot of dark voices. Like, I had a lot of meanness. I was like this nice girl on the outside, and I was a total bitch on the inside. And I just felt so bad about this bitchy voice in my head, criticizing everybody and being negative. So I'd have to cover it up and be like so nice and so positive and so encouraging of everybody. But it was such a dichotomy between that and how I really, that whole tape in my head. And I felt so much guilt about that dark side that I knew I had.
Yeah, we all do. We all have it. It's our relationship to it that matters, right? It's changing the dialogue with the conversation to recognize, okay, this is a part of me. Obviously, it's here for a reason. Where is it coming from? Is it even mine? Oftentimes it's a parental voice, it's a societal voice, it's a teacher's voice, somebody that said something.
Yeah, it was definitely an expression of my own self-criticism for sure.
Absolutely, and it starts super early, and we've got lots of industries making billions of dollars off of that inner conversation. And so to answer that question in my approach is welcome that voice to the table. Let's see what she has to say. Let's see what gold may be hidden in the shadow there. What is she wanting us to see that we might not be paying attention to? And as you're saying, like, emotional eating, we're stuffing. What exactly are we stuffing? What is the inner feelings that we are stuffing, and what are they related to? Then this is the excavation that must occur. What's it related to that we're not giving voice to? And I was having a conversation around sacred rage, this conversation around if we were to really tap in to I'm going to say rage. I know it's a strong word.
Oh no, I know all about it.
Yeah. The rage that we carry as women of what's happening on the planet right now, which is related to a deep heartbreak, that we know that there's more than enough for everyone, that they're like child slavery and sex trafficking and oppression of women and indigenous people and animals, the list goes on. We know there's a solution to all that. We feel overwhelmed with what the solution is, but we see what's happening. We want to be part of the solution. And I feel both of the women that are being called to us feel this. There's an inner knowing that there is another way, like we spoke about earlier. And in my work, it's about uncovering that we are part of the way, that we are part of the way out of what we're experiencing right now. That is a dismantling of a lot of systems that are not supporting a lot of people. And those people are rising up and their voices are being heard. And the system has to shift. With every great change comes great chaos. So it's like, just in our work, it's like there's a dismantling that happens within our clients that our work supports them in. Is like, let me let go of and uncover and release all that is not me. So I can get into what I've been stuffing all this time, which is that voice that has not been heard yet. That's probably linked to being a little girl and some type of trauma that happened. And then we heal that. We allow her to know that we're not abandoning her anymore. She has a voice in our lives. She gets to play and have fun and dress up and be with girlfriends and go out and whatever the thing is that gives our inner selves joy and pleasure. We address that, and absolutely, like, stuff is going to change.
So true.
For the better.
Yeah, so true. And it does start with us. We can't, I learned that many years ago. I mean, way too many years ago to really remember even, but I mean, I'm joking, but I remember, I used to have a lot of anger, and it was outward focus. Like, I used to march on Washington, in Washington, go down from college and buses and go march in Washington all about all these issues. But what I realized is so much of that was my rage then was a projection of my own rage that I had from childhood. And like you mentioned, I'm glad you touched on the trauma, because I did have some stuff go on as a kid that I buried with food, and used weight as a protection for, to protect me from that. And I realized that I had to heal that stuff before I could really effectively help others, even on a social justice level, because I was using that almost as a distraction from the self, from the rage I had inside of me that was burning a hole in my soul, know? And so that's, when you mentioned rage, that's the rage I remember, is when I stopped overeating. I was such a people pleaser. I had stuffed so many words and so many opinions and so many feelings, right? That I was just like, I literally had, check this out. I had a fantasy early on, because I just realized how much rage, because, when you bury all your feelings, you're like, oh, you're numb, you're numb. You don't feel anything. But when I stopped numbing out, I had so much anger, and I had this fantasy that I'm like, I want to be rich enough where I could have a house that's made of glass, and I can smash that glass anytime I want. I can just go to town and smash all the glass, and then make a phone call and have them come replace it. Like, that was literally what I wanted. That's what I wanted the money for, is so I get to smash glass and get all that rage out of me. So thankfully I don't have that now, but I certainly, like, because I've kind of started with me, now I feel like I can be a lot more effective and being an agent of change for so many other people.
Yeah, and that's perfect you bring that up, because the women that show up for this priestess work, they are coming knowing that their original wound that happens in childhood is part of their gift for the world. And it's a reframe that it isn't this traumatic thing that happened to me, what was me, as much. So we shift, even though it's inner work, is very personal work, the view is, and the perspective is, okay, how could this be my gift for the world? It doesn't mean that every woman that comes is going to create a book and like a platform and a movement and have thousands of followers. But the way they show up in their lives is naturally as a leader. And so the work that they're doing within themselves is showing others what's possible. And so we take that original wound and we go and heal that and awaken in the gold that's there. Because what I find is, you know, women, like, who doesn't have trauma, number one?
Right.
We've all had something traumatic happen that was what I call the original wound that unlocked and started to shift our perspective of the world. We go back there and we recognize, oh, there's some soul parts that I lost back then that I need to gather back, that are part of who I am, that are linked to our spiritual gifts of intuition and psychic ability, and however way it turns out, that once we heal that, we welcome those gifts back to the table, and then we can be the agent of change we came into the world to be. And the women that show up for this are really, they are leaders. They are feminine leaders. They might not recognize it yet, but on the path they do. They look back at their lives and realize they've always been a leader, that people naturally want to follow them because they're magnetic. And that's been part of hiding the light, is that magnetism has been a lot to manage, and we haven't really known how to navigate it in our world. So we learn boundary setting.
Yeah, amen. That's
boundary
beautiful.
setting.
So
Huge.
these spiritual gifts, they're sort of like they're rising from the phoenix of trauma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love that. This is a really interesting conversation. So the priestess, talk to me about the priestess path specifically.
Yeah, and so just a quick back into our history, and I go into this in this webinar I'm doing this week more in depth. In our history, a couple of thousand years ago, before the rise of Christianity as we know it today, my lineage links back to Western Europe. We were much more of an earth-based, feminine-loving, feminine-balanced people. We were very connected to the natural world. The natural world was an extension of our organic, animalistic bodies. We forget that we're actually animals, and that we have a wildness in us that's been very tamed, which links back to our conversation. So we were much more connected to the elements of the natural world, connected to each other, living in community, very close to the elements. And at that time, we were women that were called. We're identified very early on in our, as early as, well, could be as early as a baby, but young girls were prepped and sent to temple to learn the healing arts. And so we were identified as having natural gifts, and coming in with the imprint of the priestess was one that was meant to be honed and supported to be the spiritual leaders, the midwives, the herbalists. We were the original doctors of our communities. We were the ones that were very attuned to spirit. We were the oracles, the wise women. And with the rise of the Roman Catholic Church and the Inquisition, any woman that was living in that way, whatever her role was in the community, was put to trial. And many of us were burned and stoned and killed. And that was the rise of a monotheistic masculine face of God that was much more structured and lots of rules to follow. And that's where we now see where we've been the past couple thousand years with where we are on the planet now. This work is now rebirthing in a new way. It's literally awakening in our bones. It's awakening in our consciousness. Many women are having dreams about being a priestess or a midwife or a spiritual leader in a time past, and they don't know what to do with it because our society doesn't have a current box to put that in. And so this path is about welcoming that memory to heal, welcoming the gifts to the table now for what we have. And specifically priestess, different from witch, which I don't like that word. It's got incredible wounding around it. That works for some women. This specifically priestess is a woman that learns to stand in her power, to speak her voice with love and compassion, to be the leader she came here to be. Many women coming through to be leaders of movements. And the priestess archetype is an archetype that we can kind of wrap our head around, that is an embodiment of our best self, our highest self, our divine human self, that is okay with our humanness, has healed enough to be able to walk in the world, to be of service to others, and to do the work we came here to do.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you know, for those who are tuning in, you do have a webinar coming up. So will you talk about that, and after the webinar, how people can get a hold of you to learn more? Because I'm sure this is very, you know, intriguing to people. And if people are vibing with you, like this is like, yes, this is my language. I want to hear her, more of her. How do they do that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to do an introduction to the Priestess Path webinar this week. We're here coming into the end of July. And if you catch this in time, especially if you're watching on Facebook, you can jump into Temple of the Mystic Priestess, which is where you'll see the invite to that. And if you're listening to this a little bit later, hop over to my website, marcelamcbride.com, and you'll see that spelling here in the description or in Facebook. And you'll get it, there's a link there for the webinar. And so you can register there. If the webinar is already passed, then you can join, get my free priestess checklist, and you'll get an invite in there to join the temple. So there's a couple ways to join us. And this week I'm going to do this introduction to the path Wednesday evening, 7:00 Eastern, which is the 22nd, I think. And then Thursday, I'm going to do a repeat for a daytime slot at noon Eastern.
Sweet.
So,
well,
yeah.
Well, that's great. So, but if whenever they're listening, can they get this information at marcelamcbride.com?
Yep. That's the easiest place, the one place to go to catch it. They'll be able to link with us there.
Okay.
Either way. And this is an introduction to the 9-month journey that women go on with me to actually be initiated as priestesses.
Sweet. Well, you are amazing, an amazing priestess and guide for women, and really discovering their spiritual gifts and living authentically. And you are doing that. You're just such a beautiful example of that, Marcela.
Thank you.
The thing I like to ask people at the end of these interviews is, what is your deepest hunger? This being the Heal Your Hunger show.
It really is to come impact the world in the way I knew I was meant to, with my authentic voice and this movement of women rising to be of service to the world with our spiritual gifts.
Beautiful. So beautiful. And you're doing it. So God bless you. Love it.
Awesome to be with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next show.
Sounds good. Bye for now.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.